Hey guys, it is Michelle, and I am here because I have joined the BookRiot.com's Read Harder 2015 challenge. I'll put a link to the article and to the Goodreads group they've created down below if you're interested in joining up. There are 24 challenges that they would like you to meet in the year 2015. These are open for interpretation, and it's just a way to get people to read a little more diversely and kind of challenge yourself to get a little bit out of your comfort zone. So it'll either broaden my horizons of reading or reaffirm why I like to read what I already like to read. So either way, it's a win-win, right? Now, I'm going to list the 24 challenges in the order that they have posted them and list a book that I hope to use to meet that challenge with. If you are interested in buddy reading any of the books that I mentioned, please let me know. I have no idea what order I'll be completing the challenges, but if you want to buddy read one that I haven't gotten to yet, I am all for that. So just put a comment down below. The first challenge is to read a book that was written when the author was under the age of 25. So for this, I have chosen Popular by Maya Van Wagenen. She was 13 at the time she published this book. She had found a 1950s guide to being popular for girls. She decided to take the things that were in the book and apply them to the modern day at school and in her life and see how it affected her popularity. And then she wrote the memoir about it. And it's supposed to be pretty funny and at times embarrassing, but it's also supposed to have a really good message about what it really takes to be popular. Challenge number 2 is to read a book that was written when the author was over the age of 65. My favorite middle grade author is Peg Carrot. She was born in 1936, so anything she wrote after 2001 is fair game for this challenge. And I happen to have one of her books that I haven't read yet called Abduction. She wrote it in 2004, so we're good to go on this challenge. It follows a young girl whose little kindergartner brother went to the bathroom one day and never came back. They tried to follow his trail and it ended at the curb, so they think he got in a car. And she's not supposed to investigate, but she does anyway and probably gets herself in a little bit of trouble if I know Peg Carrot. So, should be a pretty fun read. The third challenge is outside of my comfort zones. This one is a stretch for me, but it is a short story collection. So I chose 40 Tales from the Afterlives. This is 40 different stories about what people think happens in the afterlife or possibilities for that. The good news is this book is only about 110 pages, so with 40 stories, they can't be that long, right? So even if I don't enjoy the short stories, hopefully it'll be over quickly. Who knows? Maybe I'll enjoy it. Trying to keep an open mind here. Number 4 is a book published by an independent press, and so for this I've chosen Strings and Bones by Kim Talon. It's about a young lady who all of a sudden starts to get communications from people who are dead, and they want her to be kind of their messenger for people who are still alive. And this goes on for about 10 years, and she's trying to appear to have a normal life when she thinks she might be going insane at the same time. And I'm curious to see why it ends after a decade or how that works, but the writing seemed okay when I read a little bit of the preview. Challenge number 4 is to read a book by an author that identifies as or has a main character who identifies as LGBTQ. And for this, I've chosen Ask the Passengers by A.S. King. And it's about a young lady who is confused about her sexuality, but really has no one she trusts to discuss it with. And where she lives is near an airport. And so she'll go outside and kind of lay back and look up at the sky and see the planes going overhead. And she'll talk to the passengers, which, you know, of course they can't hear or anything, but I guess it's a way to discuss it with herself and try to put some meaningful decisions in there. Number 6 is a book that is written by an author with a gender that is different from yours. And I've been wanting to pick up a John Scalzi book. I'm not exactly sure which one I'm going to read. I have 4 that I wouldn't mind starting with. So if any of the 4 interest you, let me know. Old Man's War, Lock-In, Fuzzy Nation, and Redshirts all sound really good to me, so if you're interested in any of those, please let me know. Number 7, the challenge is to read a book set in Asia. For this, I have chosen The Orphan Master's Son, and this is about a young man who is in an orphanage, and It's set in North Korea, and I just thought with as much as North Korea has been in the news lately, that this would probably be a pretty good time to get kind of a glimpse into that society. Number 8 is an author from Africa, and so I've chosen We Need New Names by No Violet Bulawayo, and this is an immigration story about a young girl from a para-police state in Africa who migrates to the United States and finds out that being an immigrant does not always leave you with a lot of choices. So it sounds like it could be a very, very meaningful story. Challenge number 9 is to read a book about or by an indigenous people, and I have chosen The Bone People for this. I already had this on my TBR shelf by Carrie Holme, and this book includes some characters that are Maori, which is an indigenous people from New Zealand. So it sounds fascinating because I really don't know much about them at all, and so I look forward to learning some. Challenge number 10 is to read a microhistory, and I did not even really know what that meant, and so I had to do a little research before I could even start to look at books. And this is where you take the history of something pretty small, like a single product, like maybe the history of Twinkies or something like that, and it's like a complete history of it, or a history of one event, like a really complete history. So it turns out I already had 2 on my TBR list and had no idea that they were considered microhistories. They're both by the same author. The one I chose to read is Stiff, Curious Lives of Human Cadavers by Mary Roach. Now, it's basically about how cadavers have helped humans learn more and help ourselves. And so I think it can be fascinating because I really, like, my knowledge here is like almost nil. So I think I could do nothing but learn from it, and hopefully it's an interesting read. It has fairly good ratings on Goodreads. Challenge number 11 is No Problemo, and that is to read a YA novel. So I'm sure I will be reading lots of those anyway. But to plug in for the challenge, I put Say What You Will by Cami McGovern. And this is about 2 young people in high school. The girl has, I believe it's multiple sclerosis, and so she needs an aide. And she chooses a boy who was in her class when she was young. And now that they're in high school, he suffers from OCD. And so they're kind of like 2 misfits. And so it should be a hopefully cute kind of a story going on there. Number 12, the challenge is to read a sci-fi novel, also No Problemo. That was going to happen anyway. So I just plugged in here Expanse book number 5 by James S.A. Corey. And the name of that one will be Nemesis Games. And I've loved 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so I will definitely be reading number 5 when it comes out. Number 4 will be included in my December wrap-up here soon. Challenge number 13 is to read a romance novel. Also was going to happen anyway. I discovered Colleen Hoover this year and loved Maybe Someday. So I plugged in Slammed for this one because I already have it downloaded on my Kindle ready to go whenever I get around to that one. Challenge number 14 is to read an award-winning book from the last decade. It can be a Man Booker Prize winner, it can be a Pulitzer Prize winner, or it can be a National Book Award winner. I was going to go with Orphan Master's Son, but I ended up moving that one to the Asia category, and so I went with Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, and I've heard nothing but good things and look forward to reading that one. Challenge number 15 is to read a retelling of a classic tale, which can include a fairy tale, and I started Cinder, the Lunar Chronicles series last year, and would like to continue it with Scarlet, which is a retelling in a sci-fi fashion of the Red Riding Hood story. So I already have that one downloaded and ready to go as well. Very convenient. Number 16, the challenge is to listen to an audiobook, and I already had some of these downloaded, and so I chose to listen to Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. The fascinating thing to me is that Neil Gaiman audiobooks are always narrated by Neil Gaiman, and I like his voice. It seems very soothing, and I really think I would benefit from hearing him read it versus me reading it. But it has to do with a man who gets sucked into this kind of underworld of strange creatures of London, and he has some kind of destiny there. So, dun dun dun. Next up, the challenge is way out of my comfort zone, and this is to read a collection of poetry, and I am not much of one for figurative language or symbolism, so this one's kind of bothering me. I went to Goodreads, to the Listopia, and I found a list that was poetry collections by living poets, and so I clicked on it, and I saw a pretty cover. I know it's not like me. And I clicked on it, and this guy's poems, I read 3 of them, and I kind of got it. So they're not very figurative language, and they're not very symbolic. It's like I can get something out of it. So this is what I went with. It's From Where I Stand by Robert Zimmerman. So, yeah. Gonna read poetry. Yep, gonna do it. Number 18, the challenge is to read a book that was recommended to you. And one of my good friends from high school, now we grew up on a military base, so everybody is scattered to the winds. But through Facebook and Goodreads, we get to still stay in touch. And he recommended a book to me called Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan. And it's the first in a fantasy series, and it seems like it's got a lot of politics in it, and that I would really like it. So I'm going to go with that one to complete this challenge. Number 19 is to read a book that had to be translated into English because it was originally written in a different language. And for this, I chose The Three-Body Problem by Lou Sixon. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly. But this is a pretty popular sci-fi series. It's the first book in a series from China. The author is obviously Chinese. And it took about 4 or 5 years for it to get translated, but it's supposed to be really good. And the premise is first contact with aliens. So I think the marketing said like Dune meets Independence Day. So sounds pretty cool, and I'm very excited to get around to that one. Number 20 is a graphic novel. I've read some graphic novels. I'm usually not that much of a fan, and I've been trying to think about why. And I really read the words and don't pay too much attention to the pictures. So to try to fix that, I'm going to get The Arrival by Sean Tan. And the reason is this graphic novel has no words. So there's no text for me to rely on. I'm going to have to force myself to look at and analyze and glean the meaning from the pictures. I think I can do it. It's a pretty realistic type story about a man who's immigrating to the United States without his family and having to leave them behind. So sounds like it could be pretty good. Number 21 is to read a book that is a guilty pleasure, and I'm not big on even thinking that such a thing exists. If I am reading something and enjoying it, I don't see any reason to feel guilty about it. But I chose this title because I can kind of explain why it's a guilty pleasure. It's called What You Left Behind by Jessica Verdi, and I believe it comes out in like April or May of 2015. It's a story of 2 sisters. One of them is, I believe, engaged or dating a guy who's in the military, and he gets deployed. And they, of course, write letters back and forth, and he always says, you're my reason for living, la la la. Well, that sister happens to be killed, I believe, in an accident. And so the other sister assumes her identity instead of telling him that, his girlfriend is deceased. So she has to, of course, pretend to be her sister, and I'm assuming she starts to develop feelings for him. So I'm calling it a guilty pleasure because it's not the most original storyline ever, but I'm pretty sure it'd be one of those heartbreaking, heartwarming, all-together stories. So kind of a guilty pleasure, I guess. Challenge number 22 is so far out of my comfort zone, like you can't even see it from here. And that is to read a book that was published before 1850. Classics are just not my thing, and to have to read one from that far back is just terrifying for me. And I did a lot of research in trying to find one that I felt like I could finish, and I settled on Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, and I hope I can do it. If not, I will switch to A Christmas Carol, which I'm pretty sure I can finish because I kind of already know the story thanks to the Muppets. But classics are just not my thing. And so wish me luck on this one, and let me know if you would like to buddy read Oliver Twist. Number 23 is a book published in this year. I'm assuming they mean 2015 since the challenge is for 2015. This one is no problem for me. I have tons of books on my list that I'm anticipating in 2015. But I decided to list Winter's Crime by Marie Rutkoski as the book for this because there's no way I won't read it. It's the second in a trilogy, and I loved the first book. Absolutely loved it. There's forbidden love. There are tons and tons of politics, and the writing is just brilliant, and I just absolutely loved the first one, and so looking forward to Winter's Crime. And lastly, challenge 24 is to read a self-improvement book, and I'm not big on nonfiction in general, but for this I decided to go with What Everybody Is Saying by Joe Navarro, and Navarro, I'm not sure how you pronounce his version of it, but he is a former FBI agent, and it's supposedly going to teach you how to like speed read body language. And the reason this one interests me is because I believe it will help me as a teacher. Sometimes I think the students are getting a concept when they're really not, and so if I knew more about body language, maybe I could pick up on that and be more ready to detect when they really need help, even though they're telling me with their words that they don't need help. So maybe that would help a little there. It's not a huge problem for me, but anything that would help is worth it. So thank you so much for watching, and again, let me know if you would like to buddy read anything on this list, and happy reading.